All right, welcome back, everybody. Hi, Patty. Hi, Kat. I know we have Sabrina. Sabrina's here in Alaska. And welcome to all of you joining in on the recording. I know a lot of people were like, I have soccer games, or I have this, I have that going on Saturday morning. So, before I dive into everything, does anyone have any questions or comments, or you want to unmute and just say hi? I just want to leave the table open for any of that.
Hi, Molly. So good to see your face live.
You too! I know, it's been so
Yay.
long.
I know.
Yay! So nice to have you here. Well, Carrie's here too. Carrie, if you're out there, hi. Carrie's here in Alaska. Okay, one other thing too. So as we continue on through this rundown, it's going to feel like a rundown. I have so much to tell you. Just note, I'm recording this on Zoom, but I'm also recording it off Zoom. So if my camera glitches at all, or if my internet is like, gonna shut down. I saw at least one time during the practice, there was unstable connection. I normally see that, so I pause and I repeat myself. So those of you know, the internet is the internet, and this is the Arctic after all. So if it does glitch, don't worry about it. Like I said, I recorded externally as well. Okay. A little bit of a roadmap for where we're going. So, for those of you live, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and I will address them as we go. For everybody rewatching the recording on Rizuku, if you do have questions that arise during this process or during these videos, please comment them in the discussions below the video. I do see those and comment on those, answer questions. Just love keeping the conversation going. So please feel free to share, and remember that whenever you ask a question, most likely somebody else has the same question. That's just the way it works, right? When we're like, oh, I don't know if this is a dumb question, or I often get the line, this is unrelated, but, and I'll tell you if it's unrelated, but I'll tell you also it's like very rarely unrelated, right? So a little bit of a roadmap for where we're going to go today. So I'm going to talk about First, I'm going to talk about what I'll call the cosmic calendar. So today is September 6th of 2025, and we've got a month ahead. And so as we move forward in these months, I'm going to be coordinating this recording, this live session with the full moon. Because what's really cool and what I've known for a while and followed for a while, but excited to bring you all along with me, is this way of calculating the month, right? In the US, at least, I feel often, if I'm on the internet or social media, we talk about things like the harvest moon or blood moon or all of these things. And I'm like, what is the tradition from India, right? Like, what is the equivalent from the yogic tradition? And I realized I've been doing it all along, right? It's with the nakshatras, the stars of the zodiac, which I'm going to talk more about in a minute. But we track the moon cycles, the month, the lunar month, starting with the full moon. So here in 2025, on tomorrow, September 7th, is the full moon. Depending, and again, the thing with Jyotish or Vedic astrology is that it always just depends on where you are. The answer, I always say in yoga, the answer is always yes, because there's a million ways that different astrologers, different technologies, different algorithms calculate this cosmic timing. And so sometimes it's like, wait, I thought the full moon was this day or this day. But what we really do is, like, typically the full moons throughout the year, they're all always in the same parts of the sky. they're consistent, we would say. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So we're going to talk about the cosmic calendar, not only the full moon coming up, but also the month ahead. There's a lot going on. And so I'll talk about that in a lot of different ways. Then I'm going to tell you about the full moon specifically. This is always the full moon energy that we have this time of the year. And then I'm going to talk about the new moon. So in 2 weeks from now, we're going to have a new moon, the dark moon, and the new moons rotate. They're variable. They're in different parts of the sky depending on the specific time that we're in. So I'm going to talk about this month's specific new moon, and then I'm going to draw a few parallels between this month's new moon and this month's full moon, because the full moons are consistent, but these changeable new moons give us kind of this unique mood of every single month, right? Every month of life is so different. And so we'll see if we can't pull some intentions and some good vibes for the month from all of the symbols that we're going to talk about. Then I'm going to talk briefly about eclipses. And it's almost impossible to talk briefly about eclipses, but we also have an eclipse cycle happening. So eclipses happen always together, a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse. They always come in a pair. And it's happening this month. So tomorrow. So you can look up and see. I actually didn't even look up and see where it's going to be visible, because we track eclipses where they're visible, but really it's about the event itself. And so I'll talk more about that. And then we'll just kind of round it out. We'll set an intention. We'll take a deep breath together and we'll sign off. So this is going to feel like a lot of information, and hopefully you have a notebook. Just trust that whatever resonates with you, you'll remember, you'll jot down. This is meant to pique your curiosity and hopefully just get you stoked on moving through this next month with intention, with a kind of a roadmap. Okay. So the cosmic calendar for this month, September-ish, and a little bit of October 2025. So today, September 6th, this is the last day of a chapter that goes on in part of August into September this year. It's a time of the month or a time of the year when we're celebrating Ganesha. And Ganesha is the elephant-headed archetype from our yogic tradition. He represents so many things, but what's really important here is that Ganesha represents the start of a new cycle. He's the guardian of transformation. And we say, so Kundalini is this, it's a word that just means this potential energy, right? As human beings, we all have potential. And in yoga, in our energetic anatomy, we talk about that potential as sitting at the base of our spine in the form of a snake. And so when we have an awakening in life, whether it's like a body awakening, right? You engage in new muscle that you've never done before, whether it's a mental awakening, you do try something new, and you know how it's like to be a beginner, right? We're transforming, we're doing something new, we're waking up. And then ultimately that experience changes us. That's how we know that we're working with that potential energy, because we're changing. And so Ganesha is said to be the guardian of that transformative potential energy at the base of our spine. And there's a really great story about how he got to be that way. Briefly, I'm probably going to preface everything by saying I'm going to briefly tell you this, and hopefully I do a good job at that. But essentially, so Parvati and Shiva are one of the great couples, right? Shiva is the Lord of Yoga, and Parvati is his Shakti. She's his power. The feminine and the masculine never go anywhere without one another. One cannot act without the other. So it's not a husband-wife situation. This is masculine and feminine energy. That's the symbol of the story. So Shiva has all of these guardians around him. He is always surrounded by this group that's protecting him, that's watching out for him. And Parvati is like, I want to have that same thing. I want to have someone who's just focused on, guarding me. And so what she does is, she has this bathing ritual, and she puts clays and things on her body. And what she does is she takes this clay off her body, these representing earth, right? She takes this and she forms it into this form of a guardian. And she breathes life force into this clay statue, this clay being, and he comes alive. And this is Ganesha. He's a boy. He's a young boy. And she said, he said, "Hello, mother, what can I do for you?" And she said, "You are to be my guardian. You to stand at the door because every day she does this bathing ritual and she just wants to do it unbothered. She wants no one to disturb her. She's like, I want to be alone. I'm sure everyone can relate, especially those of you who have kids, right? You're like, I just want to be alone in the bathroom. So Parvati is like, your job is to stand at this door. You stand here, do not let anyone in, not even Shiva. And he says, done. I will do it. So he stands there. And of course, Shiva comes around and he's like, let me in. He doesn't recognize this person. And he's like, let me in. And he says, no, you can't come in. I'm to let no one in. You can't do it. And he's like, do you know who you're talking to here? And so Ganesha he stands there, he's like, no. And Shiva's like, wow, he has a lot of willpower. This is like, who is this guy? And he like doesn't know I'm the Lord of Yoga. I'm the Lord of, the Lord of everything, the Lord of destruction, the Lord of chaos. And so Ganesha says, no, you cannot pass. And so Shiva is like, well, okay. He cuts his head off. And these stories are really symbolic in a lot of ways, right? It's a story for that matter. So he barges in, and Parvati is like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And then she goes, "What have you done? What have you done?" And he's mortified. He's like, "What? I don't know. I've never been kept out. What's going on?" She says, "You go out right now and get a new for this son of the earth that I had created, that I asked to let no one in." She said, you march out right now and you get him ahead. And there's lots of stories about what the instruction was, like the you see, or the first animal to the north, go out to the northern direction, and the first animal that you see, cut its head off and bring it back. Moral of the story, they bring back an elephant head. He puts it on Ganesha's body and breathes life back into him, and there is Ganesha. And so Ganesha is, from that point on, bestowed as the keeper, the guardian of transitions, the guardian of starting new chapters, of new beginnings, because he gives us that protection. He is the one, it's not like he's the one that says, okay, now you're ready. He's the one that guards the gate until we are ready. Okay. And so this is why oftentimes at the beginning of so many things, you'll see a statue of Ganesha, or you'll hear a teacher chant to Ganesha. And when we chant, when we use mantra, we're invoking the qualities of the archetype that we're talking about. So with Ganesha comes this symbol of an elephant. So you might notice elephant symbols. You might have elephants on your altar or in your life somehow. That's just a subtle reminder of this new beginning, of this ability to overcome obstacles. That's what Ganesha is all about. So today is kind of the last day of his celebration. It's kind of like the time of the year when we celebrate Ganesha, and it really starts as a threshold. And that's why I'm so excited to be coming here. This is the first month of these live sessions, and I felt like it was a really appropriate day to do that. So that's one of the other cool things with cosmic timing, is when you start to know what's coming up and how the stars are moving and how, your practice is moving, you can really start to align things in your life. And, it feels really good. I love it so much. So tomorrow, September 7th, is the full moon, and it is the lunar eclipse. So lunar eclipses are always on full moons. And likewise, solar eclipses are always new moons. Okay. And this is always consistent. Tomorrow also is the first day of a celebration throughout India called Pitru Paksha. So Pitru, so Pitr. Sometimes there's a U because that's how we pronounce it. Pitru Paksha, Paksha. Pitru Paksha, the Pitris, these are the ancestors, those who have come before us. And Pitru Paksha is a 16-day period every year where we honor our ancestors. And there's lots of different rituals and celebrations and things that go along with this, but I want to really just simplify this for all of us in that it's a time when, that's what we talked about in class today, right? Thinking about someone in your life, whether it's a physical someone. Those of you who've been following my story know that my dad died this year. So I really have felt my dad very close to me in the last months, especially in putting together this class. I also really love staying close to my grandmother, my dad's mom. So this necklace that I wear, this is hers. And so when I wear that, I feel really close to her. And then also this idea of spiritual lineage. So it doesn't always have to be a blood relative. Blood relatives mean something different to everybody. And if it feels like there's kind of this heavy energy, this is not a time when we need to go into the drama and the trauma of our lineage, because of course there's always drama, there's always things that we carry, that we hold on to. This is meant to be a time when we're working with an ancestor or two, and just remembering them, to remember the gifts that they've given us, right? The gifts that they've given us. So for me, thinking about my dad, and this spiritual tenacity, that's what always comes up when I think about him and what gifts I've been given. My grandmother, on the other hand, she had a love of cooking and being in the kitchen. That's what I learned from her. And granted, I mean, her whole recipe box is like recipes with various forms of mayonnaise. Like looking back, I'm like, wow, every single recipe she made had mayonnaise in it. And I love mayonnaise, but but it's the spirit of cooking. It's the spirit of being in the kitchen and preparing things. And I always remember she made zucchini bread. So maybe you make a favorite dish from a loved one that makes you think of them. Maybe you find a perfume or an essential oil from someone who you remember, and that helps you remember them, right? So this is a really powerful time, and you can mark down the 21st of September. That's the final day of Pitru Paksha. That's what we might say is the most important day. So some people, when you're, looking this up, or if you Google this, you might see it's only listed as that day. That's really like the culmination. So if you want to do, go out and meditate, or make an offering to the land, really think about someone in your life who, or even, like I said, spiritual lineage. So thinking about, in Kriya Yoga, are the being that brought Kriya Yoga down to earth for us to enjoy. This is Babaji. That's who we talk about as Babaji. So Babaji, I would consider in my spiritual lineage, and I like to think of him and be in that realm of my spiritual home. Right? You might think of Jesus if Christianity resonates with you. Mary Magdalene is another one that a lot of people, all these different archetypes, right? So you can also think of that spiritual lineage piece of this. So that's called Pitru Paksha. Another time of the month that we are going to have every single month is the Sankranti. So Sankraanti, Sankranti. And all this is the sun moving into a new sign. So when we talk about the moon, when the moon's movements are a little bit more random, like if you track the moon like actually in the sky, it's not like the sun where like every day the sun rises over here, goes this way, and sets over here, right? The sun is this masculine consistency in the sky. The moon, on the other hand, is all over the place. And it's consistent in the sky, actually. But what we actually see in the night sky, right? Because we only really see the moon because it's reflecting the sun's light. It doesn't make its own light. It's a little bit more scattered. And the moon represents our mind. And our minds are always fluctuating. We always have things going on in our minds. One day we feel, oh my gosh, I'm on top of the world. And then the very next day we're like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, right? Anyone relate to this? Yes, right? These are moods. And so as the moon moves through the sky, it's actually moving through these parts of the sky called nakshatras. I'm going to talk at length about these. This is going to be kind of the bulk of what I talk about. There's 20, it's basically, if you look at the zodiac, right? When we think about a zodiac, we think about the 12 signs of the zodiac. And how do we get those signs? They're on a path called the ecliptic. And again, I'm dropping lots of words on you. So if you're like, wait, I don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Just listen. The ecliptic is just the path of the sun through the sky. And the ancient forefathers, ancestors of all of us, noticed that the sun moves consistently through the same constellations every single year, right? Every single year. So the sun, as it's moving through the sky, moves through one of these 12 constellations every month, roughly, right? So every time the sun moves into a new constellation, that's what we call Sankranti. That's the day. So on the 17th of September, this is Kanya Sankranti. So Kanya is the Sanskrit word for Virgo. And here's the distinction that I'll make, and I'll try to be very clear about this. This is where Jyotish, or the science of light, Vedic astrology from India, this is where we take, well, there's lots of very sharp departures from Western astrology. So our season, so what we call Virgo season, you might be like, wait a second, we're already in Virgo season. Unfortunately, the internet and social media are going to make this very confusing if you already follow Western astrology. But all you need to know is that in Jyotish, Vedic astrology, this is based upon where the planets, the stars, the sun, and the moon actually are right now in the sky, where they actually are. So Virgo season in Western astrology is based upon the calendar and the seasons. Okay? It's not based upon actually where the planets are in the sky. And that doesn't make it better or worse. It just is. It's a different way of following the stars and the planets. Okay? So, that being said, the sun actually moves into the constellation of Virgo on the 17th of this month. And give or take, the sun's always going to move into Virgo in the middle of September. Now, 4,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, let's go back to like about 200 AD. That was the time when Western astrology and Vedic astrology were actually on the same schedule. That was actually the time when things started to take a departure, when essentially one guy decided, we're going to pin the zodiac to the seasons, to the equinoxes, and we're going to fix the dates to the Gregorian calendar. So Virgo season from now on is this day to this day. And that's why when you look in the newspaper, it's like, if you're born this day, you're a Virgo. If you're born this day, you're a Leo. But since then, since the year 200, all the way to now, 2025, we have been moving slightly. Because the zodiac it's not a perfect 365 days a year, right? There's a leap year. And so that little bit of difference has led to the actual movements of the planets shifting and moving away from the calendar just slightly. So that's why there's a difference between Jyotish and between Western astrology, or the tropical zodiac. Okay, so we call this the sidereal zodiac. If you hear the word sidereal, most likely we're talking about Jyotish. It's the actual movements of the planets in the sky right now. And if you hear the tropical zodiac, it's pinned to the calendar. Okay, so Sankranti is the movement of the sun. So when the sun moves into Virgo, what does that mean? Well, I'll put some resources in Rizuku for what it means to move into Virgo. You'll have a practice, you'll have some information more about that, so you can experience that in this month. But Virgo is an earthy sign. So this earth energy, very feminine and very detail and focus oriented. So right now the sun is in Leo. Leo always comes before Virgo. That's the thing about the zodiac. It is always in the same order. So Leo has this big lion energy, this expansive leadership qualities, the lion of the jungle. And then we move into Virgo, which is a little bit more inward, a little bit more earthy versus fire energy. Okay, so you might find, this idea of organization. I like to think of obviously going back to school, if you have kids or if you teach or whatever, we've already got that energy. But Virgo has that, when you buy like new pencils and markers and then you have a box where you organize them, that's Virgo energy. So you might find that you want to organize things, you want to pay attention to details. And especially during an eclipse cycle like we have this month, that's definitely something that you want to pay attention to is the details. So just be aware of that. That's happening on the 17th. Then on the 21st, we have a new moon and a solar eclipse. So again, lunar eclipse is tomorrow, solar eclipse is 2 weeks after. And then the new moon is always 2 weeks after the full moon. That's how the moons work. Okay. And like I said, I'll talk more about eclipses shortly. So on the 22nd, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about coming up this month. So this is a celebration, a festival, just like Pitru Paksha is honoring the ancestors. Navaratri is honoring the goddess. And often Durga is embodied during this time. So that's why we did so many Durga practices. So harnessing that warrior goddess energy. I'll make sure to have at least one additional Durga practice on Rizuku for this month. But this is the 9 nights of the goddess. So from the 22nd of September to the 2nd of October, this is a time, and again, there's lots of different ceremonies, there's courses you can take, there's all of these things that you can do. But if you're like, I can't do more things, just think of her. Think of her qualities during this time. And that's when, again, you can turn to these practices. You can do the practice that we did this morning. You can do that every day during these 9 nights. And what is the purpose? What's the purpose of working with any archetype? And so, and this is something, those of you who teach yoga, and you know I do this, I say goddess, right? But I think the word goddess comes with a little bit of baggage for some people, right? Maybe you are like, God, goddess, right? Depending on what you were taught. I like to go with this idea of archetypes. So archetypes are these standard, they've found that, and if you've studied psychology at all, you might remember Carl Jung as one of the forefathers of modern day psychology. He really studied these archetypes, this idea that as human beings, we like to think we're really unique, right? I'm a special person. I am who I am. I'm like no one else on the planet. But human beings are pretty consistent with these different archetypes that we have. We all have this like concept of mother, whether it's Mother Earth, whether it's our birth mother, whether it's our mother of, whoever raised us. We all know the concept of mother, just like we all know the concept of father. We all know the concept of earth, of fire, of water. And even though we have a different experience with these things, there's a lot of similarities. So these are common symbols throughout life that unite us, that bring us together. And so when we're working with an archetype like Durga, Google her, look up her picture, find, if you have the Shakti coloring book, that's one of my favorite ways to work with archetypes and the goddesses specifically, is like coloring her image, embodying her qualities. If you have a t-shirt with a lion on it, wearing that t-shirt during this time, do anything that feels good. I was just looking, I actually don't have her on my little altar here, but if you have an altar set up, all an altar is just an arrangement of things that you put in a place where you can see it. So here on my desk, I have just a couple things I'll show you. One of the goddesses I have this little statue of Kali. So she's a very ferocious goddess. We don't have time to talk about her today, but I love her mothering qualities and for her ferociousness. I also have this little paperweight. It's not a little paperweight. It's a massive paperweight. This was my dad's. He had, I don't even know his weird obsession with paperweights. I literally never talked to him about it, but he had a lot of these on his desk. He was an attorney for most of his life. And so I brought back one of his paperweights and that sits on my little altar. So this month you might want to consider even what are some of the themes that have resonated with you from what I'm saying? And can you put something new on your altar to honor an ancestor? Maybe like the altar can also be your body, right? So wearing that lion t-shirt, wearing your grandmother's necklace. I wear these pearls and I've been wearing them all month in preparation for this because this is all about moon energy. We're talking about the lunar month. I'm going to tell you even more about lunar energy in a moment. So I've been wearing my pearl necklace because pearls are the stone or the embodiment, one of the ways to embody the moon. moon energy. Okay. So that's the cosmic calendar. And when we talk about, so that here's my little transition, we're going to talk about the full moon. I'll type this in here because I know how people feel about spelling. So the month of the full moon in the early September, all the way through to the beginning of October, is called Bhadrapada. And you heard me say this in class today. Bhadrapada. And it means, among other things, blessed step. And remember, in Vedic astrology, in yoga, in Sanskrit, there's a million ways to translate any given word, right? So if you're like, well, I heard that it means this, or I heard that it means this, that's the way Sanskrit is. It's to translate it to English is kind of rough. It's like taking a sound, a vibration from nature and being like, how do we spell that in English? English is not a vibrational language. It's what we would call a utilitarian language. It's useful. That's why, I don't know. I think if you're a pilot in most of the world, you like have to speak English so that all the pilots can communicate with the same language, right? So if you're part of that, so that's what English does, and other languages too, of course. But Sanskrit is the language, it's how we communicate yoga. It's a language for communicating these sacred teachings. And so the sounds of Sanskrit, they're meant to be felt. And we can't really say the same about English because we have a lot of attachments to the words that we say, right? So Bhadrapada is blessed step. And the spot in the sky, so here's where I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview about nakshatras. So I talked about the zodiac, right? The 12 signs of the zodiac. And certainly you can take the path of the sun and you can do this. You can actually look into the night sky, or you can get one of the apps. I love the night sky app. You don't have to pay for a membership to use it, but the night sky app allows you to kind of, at any time of the day, even if it's light out, you can hold your app up to the sky and like it tells you the constellations. It shows you, all the satellites moving up there. It's pretty cool. But you can look at the path of the sun from our vantage point here on Earth. It's called the ecliptic. And on the ecliptic, there are 12 signs that always go in the same order. Obviously, right, the stars are not moving. The stars are fixed. Just like the sun is fixed, the sun is a star. What's not fixed are the planets. And we happen to be on one of those planets, planet Earth. So we are moving. So from our vantage point, we are looking into the sky and we see the stars. They're consistent. They're always moving in the same order. So if you ever, want to get a little bit more into Jyotish, and I'm going to just say Jyotish now. It's Vedic astrology. Jyotish is the way we say like the science of light. So in Jyotish, the signs are always in the same order. This also applies to Western astrology. So if you want to get a little bit more into it, one of the first things I tell students is to memorize the order, because the order is always the same. It is always the same. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, etc. And this is like just straight up, there's nothing fancy. Maybe there's some mnemonic that you can, figure out to remember it. I literally just straight up had to memorize these. I remember the day I memorized it years ago, I was out on a hike and we were, I don't know, hiking around picking berries. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to memorize this order. And I just committed it to memory. And so that's the 12 sign zodiac. And we do use that very much in Jyotish. But what makes the astrology of India extremely unique is the 27 divisions of the sky. So we have to set aside the 12 divisions, the 12 signs that Aries, Taurus, Libra, Virgo, Sagittarius, all of that. Set those to the side for a minute. And instead, we're going to talk about the same 360-degree circle, the sidereal zodiac, the path of the sun, and we're going to split that into 27 parts instead of 12. Okay? 27 parts. And these 27 parts of the sky that make a whole circle, these are called nakshatras. What is nakshatra? And I'll type it in, I'll spell it for you. Nakshatra. Nakshatra. So nakshatra means lunar mansion. Lunar mansion. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? Um, because it's not just, lunar energy. It's not just the moon moving through these spots. All the planets move through these spots from our vantage point here on Earth. So everything's moving, right? Or all the planets are moving. But we really track these patterns of movement using the moon. And the moon, because it is a symbol or an archetype for our mind, it has so much power over our life, right? Your mind is everything. Those of you who have had experience starting a meditation practice and really keeping with it and taking that mental journey within, your mental energy, if if you've, we'll say, got it together, you got your shit together, you got a meditation practice, you're doing it. For me, at least, I am a different human when I've got a consistent practice. For me, I have more magic in my life when I have a consistent meditation practice. That's why the moon is given so much emphasis within Jyotish. And that's why literally this entire program is based around lunar energy, the movement of the moon. So, nakshatras, this is 27 ways of dividing the zodiac. So, if you think about it like this, there's about 2.3, I think, nakshatras per sign. So instead of just saying, oh, the moon or the Saturn is in Aquarius, that's 1/12 of the zodiac, we actually say Saturn is in, Shatabishak nakshatra, or the sun is in Magha, or the moon is in Purva Bhadrapada, which is what we're going to talk about. There's 27, so it makes it more specific. And what I really love, and those of you who know me know I love to geek out on the nuances of spiritual texts and philosophy. So the nakshatras are discussed in the Vedas. The Vedas are the oldest spiritual texts in the world. And the Rig Veda especially is many, many, many thousands of years old. And, scholars date it maybe 3,000-4,000 years old. But the idea, and if you go and ask anyone in India and you were to say, oh yeah, the Vedas are like 4,000 years old, they're like, no, the Vedas are as old as time, because they may have been written down 4,000-ish years ago, but they were practiced and memorized as an oral tradition since time immemorial. And so in the Vedas, we find the stories of the nakshatras. So there's, with each of these 27 divisions of the sky, there's symbols, there's animals, there's deities, so archetypes, and we'll talk about a lot of these. And what I just love about it is because it makes Jyotish unique. It's a unique way of looking at the zodiac. It's a specific way of looking at the zodiac, and it brings in archetypal wisdom, which is, for me, one of my all-time favorite things. So when I mentioned in our cosmic calendar portion about the full moons, I said the full moons are always consistent. They're always, and again, give or take. It depends on where you are in the world. It depends on how you calculate it. It depends on when sun rises. There's all these nuances. But give or take, the full moons are consistent in what nakshatra they fall in. And so that's how we, in North India, which is where I was trained, which was where all my teachers were trained. South India has a little bit different way of calculating these things. In North India, we calculate the month based upon the full moon. So wherever the full moon is, the next day begins the lunar month. So technically our lunar month begins on September 8th. So that's nakshatras, little rough intro to those. Now let's talk about the specific full moon nakshatra that sets the mood for early September to early October. This is, as I said, Purva Bhadrapada. So I spelled Bhadrapada. And the thing about the Bhadrapadas is that there are two of them. So I put the word in the chat, Purva, Purva, Purva. There's number, and the nakshatras, just like the zodiac, right? They all are consistent. They always go in the same order, and there's 27. So Purva and Uttara Bhadrapada, again, mouthfuls, These are number 25 and number 26 in the order of nakshatras. And what's really unique and special about nakshatras is they are like a journey, just like the 12 signs of the zodiac. So they represent the journey that we as humans take through a lifetime. Just like we experience a little mini lifetime on our mat today, right? We experience the start and the beginning, the inhale. We experience the pause or the life. And then we experience the exhale or the dissolution, the death. And then we begin again. So the zodiac is the same thing. So we always start in the same spot. So Aries is the sign of the start. It's the start of the zodiac. It's the new beginning. And in the same way, Ashwini is the first nakshatra. It's the first nakshatra. It's in the first part of Aries. And then as we go through the zodiac, as we go through all the nakshatras, it's like the even you think of the hero's journey, right? When you're this little baby being, you're learning how to be, you're starting to grow up, you're learning about family, and then you grow up, you go to school, you then graduate, maybe this age of 18. That's when you kind of set out as an adult, when the society starts to give you more responsibilities, you vote, pay taxes, all that good stuff. Then you start to grow into this working phase of your life where you're kind of done with education, you're on your own, you're making your mark in the world, maybe having a family, whatever that means, whatever that looks like. And then you go all the way through life, right? And then you get to what we call midlife crisis, only because we have no other word for it. It's usually a time in life when people look back and they're like, what have I been doing this whole time? Right? They're like, I need to start going to church or something. I got to find God. I got to figure out why are we all here? This is midlife crisis, or midlife awakening. And then we move into this final phase of life where maybe we discontinue the hard working phase of our life, and we're focused more on enjoyment, more on reflection, right? More on death, right? We're all going to die. It's the only guarantee. It's the only event in life that is like guaranteed for every single one of us. And so when we have, the great fortune of getting higher in age, right? We might start reflecting on death and what that means. Our friends might start dying. All of our family might have passed on. We start to think about those things. So just like a human moves through life, the zodiac is the same way. And it's not like, when the moon is in the 25th nakshatra, does that mean like we're all gonna die? No. Remember, everything is a symbol, everything is a theme. So Purva Bhadrapada is the 25th nakshatra. So the themes that I'm going to talk about with this one are really associated with those later phases. And I love just the poetry of it and the way that it lines up, because the things that I even told you about, right? The things that we're going to talk about this month, Pitru Paksha, the fortnight of the ancestors, the 16 days when we honor our ancestors. What is the greatest embodiment of death, right? Honoring those who've come before us and understanding what gifts we've been given, what blessings we've been given from our association with these ancestors. So Purva Bhadrapada, the symbol of it, and when we say the symbol, you can actually, like the Big Dipper, if you could see the Big Dipper in the sky, but it's Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, right? It's a bear. So the ancients, and even still today, right? You can look up in the sky and look at these constellations, and they make shapes of animals, or they make shapes of the water bearer, or the water dragon, fire dragon. So Purva Bhadrapada and its counterpart, the 26th nakshatra, Uttara Bhadrapada, they together form a coffin. And I know this sounds so morbid, but I'm going to make it not morbid, because the only thing that makes it morbid is our literal thinking mind, our linear mind, right? Coffin. The only time we would encounter that is with death. But truly, you and I both know we're always dying. We're always beginning again. We are always becoming new versions of ourselves. So this symbol of a coffin represents the death of our ego, the death of the part of ourselves that says, well, I'm special. I'm not like these other people. I'm different. When we're getting to these later stages in the life cycle or in the nakshatra cycle, we're starting to think about these ideas of like, I'm no different than any other sentient being. We are all one, right? This energy of like, we're all one. Om. And so when we think about the coffin, or sometimes called the funeral cot, this is what brings to its resting place. Again, literal mind goes, well, that's really morbid, Molly. But when we say what dead body, this doesn't mean truly like actual leaving this body. It means not associating fully with this body. Meaning like, we have a body. Yes, you can want to change this about your body or that. That's fine. We're human beings. We're surrounded by culture, especially in the West, like hustle culture, anti-aging culture, right? All these things. And as yogis, we can learn to just love exactly who we are and to love the body that we have and to feel grateful for all the things that this specific body can do for us. And as we release the hold or the power that our body has over us, we find this sense of freedom where we can, be so much less focused on like, oh my gosh, wrinkles. Oh my gosh, I wish this part of my body didn't look this way. We can be less consumed by all the drama and more consumed with our role in the bigger picture. And that's what it's all about, is the bigger picture. And that's what the light side of Purva Bhadrapada, that's what it teaches us. We can get caught up in the body, we can get caught up in death, right? I've been there. I would say still in the grieving stages of, my dad's death is fresh, even though my dad had Alzheimer's. It was a long, long journey. You can read anything I've written in the last like decade, and there's a lot of discussion about that. But we can certainly grieve. It's not like we we don't need to feel sadness because, they're still with us. Certainly we're humans, we're grieving, we're feeling. And we know that where does the body go? Where does someone go? Well, they stay with us because we remember them, right? That's why we wear our grandmother's necklace. That's why we have this random paperweight on our altar, so that we can remember those who've come before us, whether they were actually human beings or spiritual beings that we feel very close to, right? So I talked about the symbol of this nakshatra, and also there's some other symbols. So a sword is one of the symbols of this nakshatra. And a sword, what does it do? It cuts ties. And so here's where, especially when we're talking about ancestral wisdom, it's this idea of unburdening ourselves, of finding peace. Some might call that even forgiveness, right? Because truly, yes, it can feel really good to find forgiveness in conversation with someone, like talking something through, like, I forgive you, we're having this moment. But sometimes we don't have another human being where we can actually have forgiveness with in conversation. Sometimes we don't want to. That forgiveness, that cutting of a burden or cutting of a tie, that is the inward journey. That's the yogi's journey. So when we think about that, the sword can be a really powerful symbol for us this month. Also, another symbol of this nakshatra is a man with two faces. We say man, right? This idea of this being with two faces, this idea of looking forward, but also looking backward. We reflect on the past and we look to the future. And the yogi always knows, right? We stand in the present moment. We will never get to the future. We can stress about it all we want. You can stress about the future all day. But where is the future going to meet you? In the present moment. It's meeting you right here. And the past, sure, there's events that happened in the past. You cannot change the facts of the events. But what can you change? What's happening right in this moment. Your perception of the past absolutely can change. That's and change is the only other guarantee in life. We have death and we have change. That's what time is. And so we can actually change the past. We change our experience of the past. So cutting those ties, unburdening ourselves, working with this idea that we have all of these blessings, these gifts from those who've come before us. And this is one of the cool things I love is when we have these conversations, even when I'm preparing for stuff like this, I am getting like intuitive hits all, yeah, I've been preparing for this for like 3 weeks. So for the last 3 weeks, I've just been like hit, 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 hit. Even this is so random. Sean and I took a walk yesterday, and there's this outhouse in the village of Wiseman. It's like kind of on this walking path that we have, and I had to use the outhouse. So I went into the outhouse, and I've actually never been in this outhouse before. I take guests there all the time, but I've never actually physically been in there. And there's this sign on the door about the history of this outhouse. And it's about this guy named Ernie who was here, in the early 1900s. And he was a guide for Bob Marshall, and he was a carpenter, and he built this outhouse. And then it talks about like the journey this outhouse has taken, and like where it was on like 3 different places, like down in Fairbanks and this and that. And then finally, this one guy, Clutch, who also is no longer alive, Clutch, but he's a little bit legendary in Wiseman. He's an old pipeline guy. His name is Clutch. And he brought this outhouse to Wiseman. And like this story is written on the back of the door. And it made me chuckle. I was like, oh, I wonder if, this Ernie is with us. I mean, we're doing carpentry all the time. I'm staring, what you can't see ahead of me is this new addition that we've been building and framing all summer long. And I was like, man, what an interesting ancestor of place that might be around us. And how funny that I read that during this time of the month, right? Wild. So all those things, just pay attention, write them down, and who knows how it will come to play. But that's the magic that I love with all of this stuff. So the animal. So each nakshatra has an animal spirit, an animal vibration, and sometimes those animals are more masculine, sometimes they're more feminine. So the animal here is the lion. The lion is known as the vehicle of Shakti. Shakti being power, this feminine power of nature. And the lion is always seen as the vehicle of Shakti. So sometimes Shakti in the form of Durga, like I talked about, but this lion-like quality. And we're coming into the season. The sun is in Leo right now, so we're in this lion energy most especially right now. And lion can give these themes of seriousness. So we have to kind of balance it out a little bit. This time of year can be a little bit serious. We can get a little bit, it can feel a little bit heavy. So just remember to unburden yourself. Let go. That's why we did all of this Durga, like, that's the purpose of that practice, is to really let it all go. And then the other thing that each of the nakshatras have is they all have deities that go with them. Deities. So deities, we would say archetypes. And with the Bhadrapadas, because there are two, not all the nakshatras have a pair, but weirdly, this month we're talking about two sets of pairs of nakshatras. So this happens to be a pair. And these two pairs, so Purva and Uttara, it's a pair of dragons. That's the symbol. There's two dragons. So Purva, which is where the full moon is, this is the fire dragon. And the fire dragon is represented by a deity or an archetype called Aja Ekapada. And don't even worry about that, but I'm just going to tell you, Aja Ekapada is sometimes called a one-footed goat deity. But let's just focus on the idea of being one-footed. That's what's really particular, because a dragon is this embodiment of snake energy. Snake is one-footed. Whenever we see, and that's why we did Ekapada Raja Kapotasana. half pigeon pose, right? It's like a one-footed pigeon pose. That's the physical embodiment. So this idea of being one-footed, this is the energy of, slithering energy, snake energy, and transformation. This is what I talked about at the base of our spine, that potential energy, or Kundalini Shakti. And so a symbol of this is also a lightning bolt. If you're like, your mind is starting to go like, oh my gosh, so many symbols, how do I keep track of them? Just notice which ones resonate. So the lightning bolt energy, it's, if you think about it, it's kind of like 1 foot. It's like a blast, a one-footed blast of energy out of the sky. And so that lightning energy, that's the vibration that comes with this nakshatra. When planets and when the moon moves through here, this is like that flash of transformation. And when we think of dragons, and especially the fire dragon, when we go into the fire, it's the great equalizer. This flash of energy that happens, it transforms all of us. That's the thing about fire. Everything that goes into the fire goes in as it is and comes out as ash. It's the great equalizer. So those are all of, oh my God, there's just so many themes. So we talked about, here's kind of a summary of the full moon energy of this month. We've talked about death, multiple meanings of death, right? How we are always dying, right? Destruction, reincarnation, this rebirth, this begin again that we have, walking between worlds. We also, I didn't mention, but we have the fall equinox coming up. The fall equinox is September 21st. And so this is the time when day and night are equal. This is when day and night are equal. And so that can be a really powerful time for setting intentions as we go into the dark time of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. Okay. And then also darkness and light. So Purva Bhadrapada, this is the fire dragon, and then Uttara Bhadrapada, that's the counterpart, the next nakshatra, is the water dragon. So we have the lightning bolt that comes down like fire in the sky, and then we have the water, like the rain that comes after the lightning and washes everything away. This is this more nourishing, enlightening sort of vibration versus like the fire and intensity. Okay, so Uttara always follows Purva. So that's the energy of the full moon in not so much of a nutshell. The next one that, and just a quick pause here, if I see some of you have to duck out, if you have to duck out, please feel free. All of these recordings will be posted on Rizuku, so don't worry about getting it all in. So just thank you for being here. So next thing I want to talk about is the new moon energy. So remember, that's the changeable time I talked about. The new moons vary depending on the month. And so we're going to talk about this month. It is Uttara Falguni. So I typed it into the chat box if you're wondering the spelling. So the Falgunis are another pair of nakshatras in the zodiac. So they're actually nakshatras 11 and 12. So a little bit more early on in the journey. And the Falgunis are known as, and what I love about the poetry of this is, like we talked about the coffin of the Bhadrapadas, right? The funeral coffin. And here we're going to be talking about a marriage bed. That's what these two nakshatras make together, a marriage bed. And I'm going to tell you some of their stories and what we can take away from this, because again, English language, we think marriage, we're like, okay, what does that have to do with me? Is this going to be about relationships? Like, yes, but not so literal. Okay, so the story here, so Uttara and Purva Falguni, they make up the marriage bed. And the story of Surya's daughter, Surya's the sun. This is a story from the Rig Veda, so the oldest Veda. And the Surya's son, daughter, was to be married. And she was to be married to Soma. Soma is another name for the moon. So there are lots of stories about the moon and all of the moon's different marriages. But this one specifically is Surya's daughter, which we'll call Surya. Surya's daughter, also called Surya, and Soma. So we've got Surya, sun, and Soma, moon. So there's this great story about this huge celebration. And prior to the celebration of marriage, it was there's usually some sort of blessing that they would seek from ancestors. So the nakshatra that comes before the Falgunis is called Magha. And Magha, which we'll talk about, at some other point during this year, Magha is all about the ancestors. And it's the deity or the archetype of Magha is the Pitris that we've talked about with Pitrupaksha. So gaining the support from the ancestors, and then as we move into the celebration, right? This is actually a tradition that we do in today's world, right? It's typical before marriage for one of the beings going into marriage to request permission to marry the other from the family, right? That's a tradition that lots of people adhere to in today's world. And so that's the idea of like getting families support to go into this marriage. So they go into this marriage and it's this majestic celebration. It's this huge, it's one of the greatest stories of the Rig Veda is the marriage of Surya and Soma. And on a symbolic level, Surya represents the sun, represents our soul. And the moon, Soma, represents our mind. And so truly, this is the great marriage of our soul, which comes into this life to live, to experience, to change, to transform, to die, and our mind. The mind is like this illusion that we unpack throughout time, that we learn, these thoughts, they don't define us. We learn about the fluctuations of our mind. We learn to kind of, especially as yogis, to let it go, right? To like, yes, my mind has a lot going on, but that's not what defines me. So when we really bring the marriage of sun and moon, we're bringing in our own masculine and our own feminine energy. So the energy of the new moon, remember the new moon is a dark moon and it happens to be an eclipse this year. This is a time when we can sit with our own marriage. And I'm not talking about your actual marriage, your relationship that's on paper here on earth, if you happen to be married. I'm talking about the marriage that we all have within ourselves, our own masculine energy and our own feminine energy. Are you giving each of these parts of yourself equal attention, equal importance? And if not, if you're in a great phase of feminine energy, do you need some structure, some discipline, some fire? Sometimes, right? Like I'm in personally a very deep Venus phase right now. Venus is very feminine, very flowy, very like, oh, I'm very comfortable. So I need discipline. I need structure. That's, to be perfectly honest, I was like, I want structure. I want teaching structure. I want to be held to this monthly time when I can come and teach these things because I'm so excited about them. That's part of the reason I'm doing this, for my own growth, my own, pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And this is that masculine energy of like monthly consistency, right? So this great marriage of sun and moon within us, that's the energy that we're bringing to the new moon this month. And so the two deities, remember there's symbols and deities that go with all of the nakshatras. In the great story, so remember in yoga, because this has been going on for so long, it's kind of like a game of telephone. Depends on who you're talking to. It depends on North India versus South India. It depends on the Vedas, the Puranas, the tantric texts. There's a lot of different versions of things. So the two deities that govern these two nakshatras are sometimes used interchangeably. Like literally, I have like 3 books that give opposing viewpoints on these. So there's essentially, I'm going to type these in so you can see the deity, the archetype for typically associated with Uttara Falguni, which is the energy of the new moon, is Aryaman. Aryaman is known as companion. That's what Aryaman means, companion, or the god of legal contracts and familial ties. And then I'm also going to tell you about Bagha. Bagha is often associated with Purva Falguni, which is the Falguni that comes before Uttara Falguni. And Bagha is the god of good fortune. And we're talking about both because, again, it's like it's this marriage. The two nakshatras are, I mean, the moon goes through Purva first and then goes into Uttara. It's always in that same order. And so Bagha being the god of good fortune, this symbol of abundance. Bagha, there's also stories of Bagha being blind. And so this concept of being blind to our own fortune. Have you ever felt that way? Where like you looked around one day and you're like, wow, look at everything that I have. You know, you spend a lot of your time focusing on like what you don't have, like, oh, I want this and I want to do this and this. And you focus outward, like I'm on achieving, but you might forget to celebrate what it is that you have right now. You know, so I'm looking out as something, you know, this is the addition that I'm staring out my window at in front of me, and it's very unfinished, it's very in the early stages, and I can get really caught up in like, oh my god, this is going to take us forever. It's the biggest structure we've ever built, so every step takes infinitely longer. Or I can focus on the fact that like, hell yes, we have spent so much time building this, and it's an incredible feat that we've even done it, right? Like, celebrate where you're at right now. Don't be blind to what's right in front of you. And even this theme of matchmaking. This is another theme of the Falgunis, and something that we work on with the new moons is this idea of really being present to matchmaking and what is needed in any given scenario. So maybe it's making a connection with a friend that you haven't talked to in a long time. Maybe it's setting two friends up. Like someone's talking about, like, oh, I wish I had more of this, or I wish I had some connection. Oh, I know someone you can talk to. Maybe you should talk to this. It's the great matchmakers. And so those are themes that we also find in the Falguni nakshatras. Really, really important here. And then the last thing is I'll say sometimes the Falgunis embody this sense of a grand destiny. And so we've talked about intuition and ancestors and this wisdom that we have coming into this particular month in time. When we work with energy of the Falgunis, we talk about destiny and like, do you ever like meet someone or have something happen where you're like, wow, I can finally see this is the trajectory I'm traveling in life. You know, it just kind of opens up this whole new space. And it's only when we're aware of these things, of the power of these things, that we can actually internalize it. Like if we're not paying attention, we just miss it. And we don't even know that we're missing it because we never see it. We miss it. Like that's the most amazing thing. So looking on a big picture with this full moon and this new moon for this month, the themes that we can take away of is honoring ancestral wisdom. That's a big one. Honoring ancestral wisdom, honoring those who've come before us, and then honoring our own death, honoring past versions of yourself. Anytime we talk about reincarnation, that's what we're really referring to is like versions of ourselves. Yes, you know, we can go deeply into this idea of past lives and whatnot, but right now, you have a version of yourself that existed 10 years ago. I recently went through my Instagram feed, which I really just consider a modern day scrapbook of my life. And I scrolled way back all the way to the beginning. And just to even look at some of those photos and remember like where I was at and who I was when I took those photos or posted those photos, I love this idea of going back. And it's powerful. So maybe you look back at photo albums, you read some of your former writings, go back and read your journals. This is a powerful month to harness that energy. Yeah. And then as we go into the new moon, this can be a time of celebration, of seeing this marriage within you of your masculine energy and your feminine energy and how that's actually playing out. So I want to respect time. I know I said 90 minutes, and I also know I said there was other things I'm going to cover. I'm going to include all of the additional information, especially more info about eclipses. I'm going to include that on Rizuku this month, so you'll catch those videos after the fact. Um, and yeah, I think that's everything I want to cover. So let's just take a deep breath, and then if either of you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. So go ahead and set pencils, pens, notebooks down to the side. Go ahead, take a moment, close down your eyes. Notice all the information, all of the things and thoughts and symbols and archetypes swirling around in your mind. You can observe all the things going on around you. I've got dogs that are really excited to go outside. All of this belongs. Just observe from that place of being a still center. And then, just as we did in class today, we're going to take a deep breath. So go ahead, breathe everything out. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Hold at the top, relax your shoulders, relax your belly. And then big open mouth exhale. The light in me sees and honors the light in all of you. Thank you for sharing this day with me. Thanks to you both so much for being here.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Lots of information.
Mm-hmm. Lots to digest.
Either of you have any questions that I can answer? Immediate questions?
I just had one. I posted it. It's something small, but when you were talking about Ganesha, is it just, is it every before every full moon you're kind of closing out honoring Ganesha? Is it just this time of year?
Great question. Yeah, it's so in honoring Ganesha, it's specifically this time of year. So it's called Ganesha Chaturthi. Chaturthi. It's a specific celebration that lasts a couple weeks. It always comes before Pitru Paksha. It
Okay.
always comes before that. So we honor Ganesha at any threshold. That's kind of the boon that was bestowed upon him because, like, oops, Shiva cut your head off. So in exchange for that, you get to be honored at every threshold. And his celebration is every year at the end of August, early
Okay.
September. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, great clarification. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, is your other is are you connected with audio on your other one? Oh, I love it.
So what are you building the new structure for?
It's the lot. It's a lodge.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's kind of it's the lodge that we will host guests in and meals and all of that good stuff. So,
Nice.
yeah. Yay, there's Sabrina.
Is this working?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. But there's a reverb, right?
Oh, yeah, yes, and I have a ladder outside too. You can see, give you a little bit different view. Um,
That's probably better now.
yes, it's
Okay.
perfect.
Okay, great. I'm just trying to figure this out for next time. It's been a while, but it's so good to see you, and I'm really excited
Yay,
about these teachings.
yay, good. Me too. I'm so excited. This is Tundra. She wanted to say hi.
Oh, hi, baby girls.
She's like, I need to take a shit. She's probably gonna go outside. She was just doing laps and like jumping all around, and I was like, breathe.
Hold it in.
Yes, yes, reel it in. Okay, awesome. Well, we'll love any feedback as this stuff is trickling through both of you. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and yeah, excited to continue on this journey.
Thank
Me
you,
too.
Molly.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a beautiful weekend.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.